Hello, everyone. This is Frank Little. I am a realtor, investor, and educator servicing the greater Baltimore area. This week, I have Brian Sachs, who is a loan officer with Homebridge Financial, but he is also a fellow investor. This week, we'll be talking about investing in mobile homes. For a short time, we had a scarcity, if you will, of quality investment homes in the greater Baltimore area, throughout the nation for that part. So, what we end up doing is we look for other vehicles to invest in. So, this week, I'll be speaking with, in subsequent weeks as well, I'll be speaking with Brian Sachs about a myriad of topics. This week, we will be talking about mobile homes. Brian has more than 30 years in the business and has done over $1 billion in financial transactions. He is also a guest once a month on the Baltimore channel WBAL, channel 11, where he discusses the current market and things of that nature. So, without further ado, let me bring in our guest this week, Mr. Brian Sachs. How are you, sir?
Well, and it's good to be here, Frank. Thank you for having me.
Yes, as I told all of our guests, we get together once a week to discuss things in the real estate market and arena and conditions and things of that nature. I've already shared with them your wealth of experience, how you have more than 30 years in the business. You have over $1 billion in transactions. You are the author of Real Estate Loopholes, How to Invest in Multi Units. We'll discuss that a little later as well. So I just wanted to welcome you and let's just jump right into it. This week
All
we'll be
right,
talking
sounds good.
yeah, this week we'll be talking about investing in mobile homes. Now, in the interest of transparency, this is something a vehicle that I haven't exactly used myself as of yet, and that is why we'll be talking about it. But you have some experience in investing in mobile homes. Tell us about it.
So, I looked around, Frank, and I said, where do people, the prices, as we are talking today, home prices shot up wildly, really crazy, to crazy levels. Rental rates went up to really crazy, almost unbearable levels. So, if you are a family struggling, really you have very limited opportunities in where you can live. Think about it. There is a substantial affordable housing crisis, not just in Baltimore, not just in Maryland, but across the country. The disparity is crazy, and I've said to you before, there is a in Baltimore, Washington, and the Silver Spring and Baltimore areas, it's one of the top 5 areas of the country where it's cheaper to own than it is to rent. But as we know, not everybody can own. So, knowing this, I'm giving you a little bit of a long winded answer, but
No,
I'm doing
please,
it
please give some
intentionally
context.
because I want to set the tone. Where does a family that are hardworking, good people, don't have necessarily a lot of money, aren't necessarily sophisticated, where do they live? Where do they live? What are you finding under $100,000 that isn't worn torn? Like a war zone.
You'd be
Think
hard
about it.
pressed.
Right. And so it made me really dig in and try to find an answer because that's who I am. I get curious and I don't stop till I find the answer. Well, the answer happened to be right in front of my face. Mobile homes are really the last bastion of affordable housing in the country. And mobile homes have this bad stigma of drug addicts and prostitutes and armed robbers and felons, and nothing could be further from the truth. Yes, there are parks that have all all those people living in them, right?
Mm-hmm.
Those are not well maintained good parks. But there are parks, for example, that are wonderful parks. They are well maintained. The people there have to go through credit checks, income checks. They are monitored in terms of the appearance. All the common areas are well taken care of. Um, and so it presents an opportunity to buy a mobile home. So it's interesting, Frank. I'm going to say it to you this way. When I'm buying it, it's a mobile home from the seller. When I'm selling it, it's a manufactured home to the buyer.
Exactly. And I want to speak
All
to that
right. The
really
words
quick.
are different.
Exactly, and it's a mindset shift. And what we want
Right.
to do is we want to make sure that we're very clear. We're not talking about the things that are falling apart in disrepair. The foundations are bad. What you're talking about is giving someone a prefabbed home that is in very good condition, that is livable, I should say habitable, and it is not in disrepair. Like you're not advising to be a slumlord. What you're doing is looking for another avenue to create passive income. And
Well, I'm actually not renting them, Frank. So let me just
that's
stop you
even
for a
better.
second. I am not renting them out.
Ah,
I will buy them and sell them. I will also buy them, fix them, and sell them. I will also buy them and wholesale them. And I will also buy them and owner finance them. So
ah,
most of the better parks are not going to allow rentals.
excellent. Okay, all right. I learned something. So when you said, I mean, you just opened up a can of worms for me. So you said that you own or finance them. Just give us a quick walkthrough of how you've done that or how it's done really quickly.
Well, so, look, I think you and I would both agree that you make your profit on the home when you buy it, not when you sell it,
I
right?
completely agree.
And so I'm oftentimes able to, well, let's back up. The first step is really to look around that area in that zip code and find in that area, in that zip code, what a 3 bedroom apartment might rent for.
Mm-hmm.
Let's say a 3 bedroom apartment, 3 bedroom, 2 bath. I don't know, 1900. Is that a reasonable number?
We can. That's a working
Okay.
number.
Okay. So if that thing is renting for 1900, I now can give someone a 3 bedroom, 2 bath home that they can own free and clear, where there's nobody on top of them or on the bottom of them or to the side of them. And they have their own private backyard, and they have their own private shed, and they have their own private driveway.
Hmm.
And I have to have those numbers come in, uh, probably around 15 to 1600, because 300, 400 a month is really enough of a savings to someone to make them pay attention, if that makes sense.
It does. Okay.
It makes it attractive. And so I back into my figures. I have to now, let's say I'm working with 1500. Now I got to figure out what the park rent is. So if the park rent is 500, well, that means I could charge 1,000 a month. And now I can back into what that means in terms of what I can sell the property for.
Okay.
So it's backwards math, I like to call it, Frank.
Yeah. So you begin with the end in mind and work backwards to make sure that the numbers all align and fit. Okay.
Correct. But if I tell you the interest rate, you will probably think that I've lost my noodle.
So
Like
what
I've
might the
totally
interest
gone
rate
off the
be?
deep end. You know what? I'm going to tell you the same thing I tell my client. Doesn't matter.
That's actually the right answer.
Okay. The interest rate's not your issue. The interest rate, look, if you can get a mortgage on your own, by all means, go get it, because I prefer cash. And if you can get cash, I'll actually sell it to you a little bit less for that privilege. But if you want me to finance it, well, here's your payment. It's 500 lot rent, 1,000 to me for 10 years. Interest rate's not the issue. The issue is in 10 years, you're going to own the home. And the other issue is it's $300-400 less than what an apartment might be. And it's not changing.
So basically, what is happening here is the person is buying a payment, basically. So the interest rate is
They're
not necessarily the important factor. It's because the numbers work for them on a monthly basis, and because that's palatable, the deal works as opposed to worrying about an interest rate, which is, I don't want to say a non-factor, but it's not as major as a factor as it would if we were approaching this differently.
Right. So let me say this without being rude or obnoxious. Where are they going to shop me?
Hmm, that's a good question.
Well, I mean, there are companies out there that find, like Aberdeen Proving Ground Federal Credit Union, 21st Century. There are a number, and I give all the buyers a list. But if they can go shop me. I prefer cash, by the way. I prefer you give me the cash and you can have the keys and have a nice day.
Got
But
it.
if you want me to finance it, it's because you have a challenge.
Exactly. Yeah.
And just because I know there are investors here, I'm trying to get my investment back between their down payment and the monthly payments. I'd like to have my investment back in 18 months.
Ah, it's ironic that you say that. I was with a young investor yesterday, and he's looking at an actual house in Baltimore City. Just as a quick aside, and what you just said is what I told him. We were discussing the numbers, and I said, just think about this. This is your purchase price. This is what you're all in at. This is how much these places are renting for. Divide how much you are all in at by how much you'll get per month. That gives you a number of how many months it will take for you to get your investment back. After that month, everything else is above board. You're playing with house money. and
Right.
and I tried to explain that to him. You just to take a step back really quick. You touched upon something. It's ironic that you say that is a stigma attached to mobile homes because we tend to think of them being seedy. What you were saying here is that there are hardworking Americans who maybe they're first generation in this country. Maybe they got out on their own pretty young. Maybe they didn't have their family didn't have the resources. They weren't born into a family that had resources. So this is a perfect opportunity to, like you said, get the keys from you. You receive the cash, which meets your needs. They have a clean, safe place to live, and it works out for the both of you. I guess my question would be, you said that you don't like to hold on to them, so let's talk timeline. From the time you purchase, let's say it only you purchase it, the numbers work in the deal, and they're only cosmetic fix-ups that you have to do. We spoke about it in the previous episode where we said, there are handyman services that you could secure to go ahead and get the work done. Because I don't really see Brian Sachs swinging a hammer at this stage.
Well,
So,
you know me pretty well. I never swung the hammer at any stage, Frank. Because if I
so
swung the hammer, I'd probably hit myself in the head and knock myself out.
exactly. So at that point, so from the time that the deal that you are working to take possession to the time where you're turning over the keys to someone else, what does normally your timeline look like?
2, 3 weeks.
2 3 weeks. Oh wow. And I want investors, and when you shared with me that you actually owned mobile homes is what really piqued my interest and what I really began to look at. That might be your next book, Brian. And if you already don't have one in the works, that might be the next book. Is I really began to think about that this may be a vehicle, because in the interest of transparency, I was having some difficulties scaling up, and what I was doing is looking at other avenues where I could get some income in. But you really piqued my interest where you're saying basically 2 3 weeks from the time you take possession to the time you're turning over the keys. I mean, that's very attractive. Um,
Well, so think about this. Um, it's not real property.
Now let's talk about that. When you say it's not real property, what do you mean?
Well, so I've had tenants in houses where it was very hard to get them out. I
Hmm.
think the tenants knew the laws in Baltimore City better than the judges, honestly.
I agree.
Okay. And remember, there is no real estate involved here. This is a property, this is a car title. I close on these deals at motor vehicle or at a tag title place. So, you know the old saying, you don't pay, you don't stay, right?
Exactly.
I don't have to foreclose. I just get the sheriff to change the doors and get them out.
Ah.
It's a
So
car
basically, you just go
repo.
through a
Now I'm not
standard
going to.
eviction process, 30 days,
No,
notifications, and
sir.
things like that.
No, sir. This is a car repossession.
Oh, so you call the sheriff. The sheriff comes on the scene, tells them they have to vacate. You take possession of the keys. You change the locks and keep moving.
And next day, all done. Now, the reality of that is most of the time they get behind and leave on their own.
So they just take off and abandon it.
They're middle of the night kind of folks, oftentimes.
Ah. So
Okay.
as an
So,
investor, you have to, again, we go back to mindset. Your mindset is different. Whereas, and you touched upon Baltimore City specifically is a renter friendly city. There are professional renters in this city, and I've learned that
100%.
I've learned that, the hard way not too long ago myself, where there are people who know the rules, they know the timelines, and then if you threw the pandemic in it, I mean, they just went wild because, there are a lot of investors, landlords who were hurting. They were trying to get their units filled, and, that's another episode. But I agree. So what you're saying here is the mindset is that this is not real property. This is a car title that if they fall behind, normally, unlike when you have a physical structure in terms of a house, um, where you have to go through the eviction process, which can be pretty lengthy, you're saying that normally these people vacate on their own. You have somebody go in, clean it out, tidy it
Frank,
up.
what happens if you don't pay your car payment?
Eventually, the repo man comes.
Well, right. They'll be nasty 30 days, nastier 60 days,
They escalate,
nastiest
yes.
90 days. And one morning you're going to wake up and there's no car, right?
Correct.
And they will have filed the papers with the DMV to get your title. Is
Ah,
that correct?
correct.
This is just a car that don't drive.
Ah, it's just a stationary car.
Correct.
Okay, all right. And
Well,
I
it
think
actually
that
has wheels when you think about it.
if you remove the foundation, yeah, there are wheels
Yeah, if you
underneath.
remove the skirting, it's got wheels.
Okay, all right. So you said you don't hold them. You normally sell them. So what, in your opinion, what would be a good margin for you to purchase, turn around, and unload? What would make it in your mind? What would be a good deal?
Um, I'll give you an idea of one that's about to settle.
That's even better.
It's a 3 bedroom, 2 bath, double wide. We bought it for 41,000, and we have now sold it for 64.9.
And what was the timeline from start to finish, roughly?
Uh, this one will be 4 weeks.
Okay, so I want to do some math here. So what you're saying here is you purchased it, you're selling it for 64, you bought it for 41, so you're making $23,000, and if you divide that by four, so basically you're making about $5,700 a week. That's basically the
Well,
math.
yeah, I
If
mean,
you
you can do
if
it that way. Sure, that is math.
yeah, so basically, I would like for
They're
someone
not
some
all
of
that good. They're not all that good.
Yeah, I know, but just for the sake of this example, let's just say, right? For the sake of this example, I would love for someone to show me where you can buy something that's not real, that's not real property, and make almost $5,800 a week. That's a very good investment. And I think what happens here is many people are gripped by fear, and they think, well, oh, that's not really something that I've been into. But I think what you've really done is give it some context. What you're basically saying here is that this is not real property. It's not like a real house. You have a car title, and normally the individuals who live here, if they fall behind, they pretty much evict themselves. So if you have the
Usually.
support system of the handyman that can go in and make the repairs to get it turned around, a cleaning crew, somebody that's always got to come cut the grass and do those things.
Well,
This is
well
I don't want
so I'll give you a bigger secret.
to. Okay.
I don't know if I want to tell you all these secrets, Mr. Little. I'm going to tell you another secret. Baltimore has a very significant population of Hispanic
Mm-hmm.
folks. Okay, a very significant population, And especially in the eastern part of Baltimore City and County, there is a significant presence of Hispanic population. Um, they're not all here legally.
So they
Okay.
deal in cash.
So they deal in cash. I'm not about making generalizations about any group of people. Okay.
Hmm.
But my observation has been that many are in construction, many
Yes.
work very hard, many do not care what the property looks like inside, because they'll fix it themselves. And they actually prefer to fix it themselves because they're paying less and they'd rather put it up to their own standards, their own likings.
Yeah. So it gives
Um,
them a sense of ownership because they're the ones that are doing the work, and if it suits their needs.
Correct. And they can just make it as they want to make it, whatever they want to do to it. And so I've sold a couple that way.
Ah.
Really, I mean, the this isn't a stick built home. This is a mobile home, a manufactured home. And if water runs, the floors fall through. They have all sorts of other issues.
Mhm.
Some of the older ones weren't built really well, to be very honest. They weren't built to great standards. HUD got involved in, I believe, 1976, and now there are standards, and every year they get nicer and nicer and nicer, believe it or not. Um, but I find that in the areas I'm dealing in, oftentimes I don't have to do any repairs.
Ah, that's even better. So, so I mean, we're talking about some tremendous upside. In the previous episode, when we were talking about multi units, we began to speak about the pros and the cons. So, what I want to do is let's discuss, realistically, because you've been through this, and I want to thank you for sharing um, your perspective on this. And so, the pros, if I'm hearing correctly, are number one, this is a car title, so it's not, you're not held to the conventions of, oftentimes when you are trying to take possession of a property, you have a whole bunch of other things. You close at the DMV, or the motor, excuse me, up north we call it the DMV. Here's the MVA. You close at the MVA or a title place. You take possession. The time the threshold is very, to get it turned around. Oftentimes, it's pretty much like an as is situation, because the individuals that you are working with, and again, we're not stereotyping anybody. You're just speaking from your experience, and I appreciate that. And on this podcast, that's completely fine. We're talking about what you have done with boots on the ground. Um, so they often deal in cash. They move in. Oftentimes, if there are any repairs, you don't necessarily have to do them because they're building it to they're renovating it or modeling it to fit their specifications. So they may have one bedroom, a living room, a bathroom, and then a large place where they keep all their tools as opposed to keeping them outside on their truck. If they want to live next to their tools, that's their business. But what you pretty much do is you provide a prefab, as we like to call it, and they pretty much take it from there. So, what are some of the cons? If based upon your experience, what are some of the cons that you've come into?
Well, you've really got to know your market.
Mm-hmm.
And it actually, so let me compare it, Frank. If I wanted to buy a house in 21215 in Walbrook, let's say, right?
Mm-hmm.
Is that 21215 or
Yes, it is.
21216? Okay.
It's 1-6. It's 1-6 because I have a house
Okay.
over there. I'm
Let's say
working
I
on
want
right
to
now.
buy a townhouse in Walbrook as an investment property. You can tell me in 3 minutes what the house is worth, right?
Yes.
Based on the amount of bedrooms, bathrooms, homes that have sold, homes that are for sale, and the condition of this particular home, right?
Correct. Yes.
It's very different in the mobile home park business, in the mobile homes, because where that mobile home is located matters a lot. And there are 5 different parks, as an example, in 21220. The mobile home will be worth a different amount in each of those parks. If you had the identical home, identical year, identical floor plan, identical condition, they are worth different amounts in different parks. Because as we've said, some of these parks are prostitutes, drug addicts, and hoodlums. Some of these are just wonderful, hardworking, blue collar, and even white collar Americans that are, finding their place and prefer to own rather than rent and being in a more affordable situation.
Yeah, I've seen prefab homes that were double wide. They have some places they've bricked in the foundation. Sometimes I don't know what is the term that they use where they cover the wheels at the bottom. What is that called?
That's skirting. The
Skirting. There you
skirting.
go. Yeah, they skirt the bottom. I've seen them build a deck off of it. I've seen them put a
Yeah.
hot tub on the deck. Like
And a
I've really
shed in the back.
this is in the areas that you're talking about because as I said, after you piqued my interest, I did a Google search and I just drove through. And like you see a ton of hardworking individuals. It's not like they're sitting at home drinking beer, taking pot shots at bottles all day.
Yeah,
You see
you have
work
those
trucks, you see
too.
them getting up, their kids going to school. Um, you know, so what we're doing here is just like when you got a luxury market where you put certain things in houses to target luxury clients. You have uh, uh, family oriented neighborhoods where you want to make sure that schools and everything are accessible. It's the same thing with this, using the same criteria, but just in a different way. And I want to go back and I really want to stress this to our viewers and our listeners. It's about mindset. When you are investing in prefabbed or modular homes, or whatever term you want to use, it's a mindset shift, and that's what this whole episode is about. It's how do you approach it, and Brian has just given us his experience and really sharing with us what it really is, and I greatly appreciate that today. So if we could really quickly transition now. You've written a book about owning multi units. You also own mobile homes. Um, and you let us in with there was not only in Baltimore but in Maryland, inventory was low, so you began to look at this vehicle. Is this a vehicle that you see yourself staying in long term, or is this just a stopgap solution until the market corrects itself? What are your thoughts around that?
I believe very firmly. So I love making money, Frank. Let's just put it out on
And
the
I
table,
do too,
right?
and that's why I like
I
you.
love making money. Okay. But I genuinely like helping these folks. I
Exactly.
genuinely do. These are your firefighters, your police people, your waiter, your landscaper.
Hmm.
These are the people that without them, the whole country doesn't function. And they
Exactly.
deserve safe and affordable housing. And there isn't any. Honestly, there really isn't. And so, yes, I love making money, and I'm going to say that that's my priority because it is. But it also feels good. And, you know, let's talk about a different number, Frank.
Okay.
Let's talk about if I were to buy a house in Baltimore for 150
Hmm.
that we believe would sell for 200 and needed $20,000 of work. Would you do that deal?
Mm.
Well, let me ask you a different. Let me ask it to you a different way.
Okay.
Would you buy a property in? I don't care if it's in Baltimore. Doesn't matter where it is. Would you buy a home where, after your purchase price and fixing it up, and the ARV, the after resale value, where you would be comfortable making 20 grand?
Yes.
Okay. How about 15?
We're getting close to the no.
Okay. So 20 is the magic number.
uh, that's where I feel comfortable. Someone who helped me get into investing, that was the number that he gave. That's the number that he taught.
Right. And that number is leaving you enough wiggle room in there when something goes south in the deal,
Correct.
right?
Yes.
Okay. But you're putting at risk generally 150 to 200,000 to make that 20 in Baltimore City right now.
Mm.
right?
Yeah,
Because you're going to have a mortgage, you're going to have reno costs, you're going to have money to buy it, you're going to have money to sell it.
true.
Is that fair? I mean, I don't know. I'm
No,
asking
no,
you.
that is very fair. That is very fair.
Okay. So you're putting 200 at risk to make 20. I'm putting 20 at risk to make 20.
Point made. And for our
Or
listeners,
40, to be fair, 40 at risk to make 20.
so in the interest of our listeners, I want to say this. As an agent, I have worked with Brian as a loan officer to get deals done. There is very rarely where I speak with him, and that's one of the reasons why I enjoy having him as a guest as often as I do, is because what you see, there are times that he speaks to me and I am thinking and learning myself. So what I want to do is really, let the listeners know that there are times that I'm sitting here learning and just as right along with you. It is very interesting that you put it in that context. Why would one risk 150,000 to get 20 when you can put out 40 and get 20? I mean, that's just simple math. So
Right.
I
You're
think
still
that.
getting 20.
Say it again.
20's 20,
Yeah,
right?
20 is 20. But what I really wanted to point out to our listeners is, that's why it is very important that you have the right people on the team. I rented out my first house 20 years ago, and I'm still learning things as I go along. And that's part of the reason why we have this podcast. This is part of the reason why you see me on so many social platforms trying to tell people that it's always the right time to invest. It just depends on the numbers, and how you're getting in and how you're getting out. Brian shared with us in this episode clearly. He's not looking to rent it out. He's not looking to keep it long term. This is not, 20-year, the 20-year deal. When we discussed multi units, we said buy early, buy young, hold for appreciation, hold for equity. Then there are different, it opens up different avenues as you get older and your expectations and your family and your obligations change. You can use that vehicle. What he is saying here with prefab homes is that his mindset is completely different. And I think that is the value in this episode. And as we know, we begin to wrap this up. Again, I'm with Brian Sachs, Homebridge Financial. He's not only a loan officer with 30 years in the business and, plenty of transactions, but at the same time, he's accessible, he's knowledgeable. He is in a moment. I'm gonna let him share with you how you can get in contact with him. But I really want you to pick up his book, Real Estate Loophole, Investing in Multi-Units, because it really spells out in a step-by-step manner how to get into that. And I want to encourage you, if you got time, sitting in Florida, enjoying yourself, maybe, just maybe, you want to start thinking about writing a book about that. That might be your next title, because there are many people who, for one reason or another, can't get into investing in the conventional way like a lot of people. And I know we discussed, 3.5% down, doing it through a FHA. Some people even have a problem doing that. So, but they have 3 or 4 cars. So, and I just want to put this in perspective. It just dawned on me. $40,000. If you were to go out and purchase a brand new car for $40,000, that wouldn't even be a mid-level car. Nowadays, I mean, if you get all the bells and whistles in a smaller vehicle, that's over $40,000 itself now.
It's a Camry.
Yeah, exactly. So, you're talking about, putting that money in your pocket. If you take the money instead of buying the Camry and go and invest it in this, you get a greater return. So, as we begin to wrap up, Brian, as always, I want to thank you because I learned something this week. And, we do
Frank,
this on a
I'm
weekly
always
basis.
learning too.
We do this
I'm
on a
always
weekly
learning
basis.
too.
So we will be coming to you on, next week as well with a different topic. But really quick before we take off, if you could just tell us about your book. It's on Amazon. So tell us about your book. Tell us about if they want to get in contact with you for a free consultation, whether it be for a loan or whatever else.
Sure. So the book is called The Real Estate Loophole, and you can get it on Amazon, as Frank has said, or you could visit directly and go to therealestatelyoophole.com. Again, therealestatelyoophole.com. If you want to get in touch with me, you can email me. It's bsacks, SACKS, at homebridge.com. Frank, you thanked me, but I got to thank you because you truly are a pro. You care about your clients, and it's so evident in the questions you ask. I get to see it selfishly because I see how you represent your clients when we work together and how you are truly their advocate and truly their educator. But, you know, the day I stop learning, I hope is the day the shovel hits me with the dirt because
Exactly.
um, look, you said mindset, and the reality is there really are two kind of people. There are three kind of people in the world. I'm going to end it this way. There's three kind of people I have observed in the world. There are the Bryans, and it's not healthy, by the way. I am the kind of person that will jump into the pool and pray like hell on the way down that there's water in that pool because I didn't check. Okay.
Mhm.
So that's one kind of person. That's not great. That's not a good way to be. But it's no fear. Jump and pray it's going to work out, right? The other person is the person who is not only looking at the pool, but they're testing the water for bacteria, and they're going to take the temperature of the pool, and they're going to make sure the weather conditions are right, and they're going to do everything else. And by the time and they're going to have an engineering person go out and look at the diving board, make sure it's safe. And by the time they do that, they never jump in. They're paralyzed. It's analysis paralysis. So you have me jumping, hoping there's water, and you have the person that does absolutely nothing because they're analyzing everything. You got to be the third person. You got to be kind of in the middle. Don't be afraid to jump, it's okay to test the water, but once you tested it, jump. Okay, make sure there's water in it and jump, because
Exactly.
the reality is there's only so much you can learn. Most of what you got to learn by doing.
Mhm.
And I didn't know what I didn't know till I started doing. Have I made mistakes? Yeah, of course I have. Have I learned? Absolutely. And I continue to learn. And you know, that's why I think you're bringing such a valuable service to your listeners.
And I greatly appreciate that. And that is truly the focus of, because as I said, I'm a former educator, and what I realize here is there are people who, you said this in another episode as well. There are people who listen to the wrong people. Your third cousin removed who tried to buy a house in the 80s when Reagan was president and interest rates were 10%. We haven't seen that since then, to my knowledge, right?
No.
So if you're listening to someone whose advice is almost 40 years old, that kind of tells you something. What I want to
Yeah.
do is I want to bring people to this show who are actually engaged in the work. I want people who are actually out there doing it, who've made a few mistakes and have lived to tell about it. I'm one of those, individuals myself. You and I will talk, in another episode. I plan to, share a situation that I'm in with one of my properties. But what I really want to do here is number one, let people know, get into it, and get the right people around you. Spend your time looking at your numbers because that's important, but learn by doing. So we'll stop there. Brian, I want to thank you for coming on this week. I will see you probably the same time next week. We'll come on and we'll have another topic. There are people in the chat who are saying that they're having some issues hearing us. I'm going to make sure that we work that out. But there are also people in the chat who are thanking you. One of which is Lisa Johnson. We helped her buy a house out in Baltimore County a year ago, so she's waving at you in the chat. But this is evident of the people that we have worked with, who we've helped, make their home buying dreams come true. So at this time, we'll go ahead and wrap it up. Again, I want to thank I'm not even gonna say guest. You're a co-host now. We've done this enough. I want to thank my co-host, Mr. Brian Sachs. So we'll close here, and we will see you again next week. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
All right, ladies and gentlemen. Again, that wraps this episode. I am Frank Little, educator, investor, and host. Um, this is a weekly podcast where we talk about how to get into investing, home ownership, and basically getting your piece of the American dream. If you already haven't done so, please be sure to go ahead and like, share, and follow this video, as it is an educational tool and it's not necessarily something that we expect you to watch beginning to end, but what we would like you to do is reference it as needed. So again, take care of yourselves, and we will see you soon.